Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
For 17 years, I sprayed flat, and I would say 7 or 8 years in, I got to think, I'm like, there's got to be a better way to finish these doors.
Welcome to the 4th season of the Woodworking Network podcast and a new episode. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by Hexagon. Today our guest is Nathan Guffey, founder of Guffey Systems, an innovative developer of products to make production finishing more efficient. But before we talk to Nathan, I want to talk a little bit about sometimes the process is the tool. There is a paradigm shift going on in the professional woodworking world. For years, people have been focused on making machines go faster and more accurately. Now many people are realizing that more time is lost in what goes on between the machines than while parts are being machined. It's kind of like the expression, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's often attributed to the U.S. Navy SEALs. The idea is to practice a process slowly until it's perfectly smooth and flawless, and then it will become fast. This is better than focusing on the speed from the beginning, because that way it does not help build crucial fundamentals. In woodworking, for years we've focused on faster and more automated machinery to pump out parts in less time. But what happens to those parts? Often they wind up piled on carts or stacked awaiting sorting or moving to other machines and processes. Too often, all the time saved on the machine can be lost in the process that surrounds it. But more visionary people in the industry are seeing this disconnect and working to change it. Finally, material handling has become sexy. When CNC routers were new in the woodworking and nesting was just catching on, somebody told me the real secret benefit of nested-based CNC manufacturing was not in how fast the parts were cut, but in how little the parts had to be handled. But sometimes efficient nesting for better yield was the enemy of efficient material handling, as parts for one cabinet might be spread between multiple sheets of material. Today's software-driven manufacturing execution systems, MES, combined with sophisticated material handling, are literally making short work of what happens between each machine or process and making it possible to do one-off custom work as fast and efficiently as a whole bunch of repetitive, identical pieces, parts, or projects. Software can keep track of all the parts in a process, making sure they're all correctly processed no matter when they show up on whatever machine they go through. They also can be automatically shunted off to a buffer or storage unit to temporarily wait for their turn in the process. Then, when that time comes, they're seamlessly slipped in line where they are needed. Parts that go together can be stacked together automatically by robots right before assembly. Even in manual operations, there are more material handling solutions coming to the forefront to address what happens to speed parts along in the process. Maybe you don't have the money or space for a big automated storage and retrieval system or an automated finishing line, but new ways of processing and moving parts could dramatically change how those parts flow through your operation. Don't overlook things like how often you are touching, moving, or sorting parts. What can you do to speed up that operation and eliminate wasted time and space? Slow down, make it smooth, then go fast. I want to get to our interview with Nathan Guffey, but first let's pause for a word from our sponsor. Software has become crucial to successful woodworking businesses, but some shops might not recognize the name of Hexagon, the software leader in the woodworking industry. More familiar are the company's two woodworking CAD/CAM brands, Cabinet Vision and AlphaCam. Cabinet Vision simplifies the process for all furniture, woodworking, or case good manufacturers by using a single, fully modular software package to go from design to manufacture. AlphaCam is intelligent and intuitive CAD/CAM software for woodworking, metal, and stone cutting. Learn more at cabinetvision.com or alphacam.com. Now let's get to our interview with Nathan Guffey. Today, my guest is Nathan Guffey, founder of Guffey Systems, an innovative developer of products to make production finishing more efficient. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Nathan.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Before we talk specifically about finishing, I wanted to get a little bit of, about your background. You had a cabinet shop before you started Guffey Systems, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yes, I'm a third generation cabinet maker. My grandfather started the business back in the 70s and taught my dad. My dad trained me once I graduated high school in 2000. And after a couple years of training, I pretty much took the lead and really enjoyed it. I've got a background in construction as well, which kind of led to me running the cabinet business. My dad, he built cabinets. He got into construction, enjoyed that as well. So he decided at one point he knew that he couldn't do both. So he decided to go the construction route. He's been a general contractor for, I believe, 45 years now. So at that point, he decided he would go into construction with the hopes of being able to train his kids at some point, which, like I said, happened in 2000 once I graduated high school. So I ran our cabinet business for 23 years. I've got 23 years experience in the cabinet making, finishing, anything woodworking, building furniture. We don't just do custom cabinets, but we'll build furniture, mantels, entertainment centers. So really grew to love woodworking. But yeah, we've had the shop now, I guess it's about 52, 53 years old, I believe. But yeah, so through that process, Dad trained me early on, and I was always one to want to kind of change, try to figure out ways to make things faster and speed up production. And so that kind of led down the road, which
so that's how Guffey Systems came about, huh?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So for about 17 years, I was finishing flat. I went through all the different construction methods of the cabinetry, from pre-finishing parts, manually getting the parts finished, assembling the cabinets, attaching frames to them. We'd move our cabinet boxes into our spray booth, spray those face down. We'd move in a handful of cabinet boxes. So we've also done pocketing method as well. But yeah, so as far as cabinetry goes, we made a lot of changes here at the shop, going from the raw interiors that we would finish ourselves, and we would made the change to pre-finished interiors, and just kind of progressed, trying to figure out the most efficient way for the entire process, which finishing was always the area that we would slow down, and it mainly when it come to our cabinet doors. So
what gave you the idea for the Guffey system to change that up that way?
Well, as I mentioned, for 17 years, I sprayed flat, and I would say 7 or 8 years in, I got to thinking, I'm like, there's got to be a better way to finish these doors. I'm tired of spending my life in the spray booth, tired of bugs and dust, debris, anything getting in the finish, taking too long to dry. Flip a door over too early, only to find out it's stuck to a rack. And So for years, I was like, there's got to be an easier way. And like I said, I've made so many changes in our shop other than finishing. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So the spring of 2017, I decided I was going to test out some finishing on cabinet doors vertically. I built up a little rack. I sprayed one set of cabinet doors on it and immediately knew, like, I have got to make this change. It was, I will argue, the most impactful change for positive in our business. But standing in a spray booth after that job, after seeing I was able to achieve the same quality of finish in half the time, I'm looking at the little makeshift rack that I built up, and I just think I'm like, I think I've got an idea. I have a concept I believe will work for some equipment to offer to cabinet shops. And having the background in finishing and in cabinetry was very helpful in figuring out what finishers, what cabinet shop owners would need, which, like you alluded to, is pretty much how Guffey Systems was born. I've got a little bit of innovative background. I've got some other ideas that I've invented, got patents on, not in the woodworking industry, but I do have a couple of items I've developed and invented, and I found that I really love that. Like, it was so rewarding to take an idea and turn it into something. And I actually talked to a business advisor, family friend of mine, that he told us early on. We took one of the first ideas to him, and he says, once you invent something, like, once you have that mindset, like, you will find a solution to something else, and you're probably going to find yourself inventing other items and
never be satisfied.
Yeah. So, but I'll argue with this, that this fell right in my wheelhouse. This product, I was comfortable with it. I knew what we needed at our shop. I knew where we needed to improve. And talking to many of our customers, that whether it's leads that they'll inquire through our website or call, we hear the same story over and over. The spray booth is my bottleneck. It's where I slow down. I'm spending my life there. I have to, if I've got to have a job ready to go out by Monday morning, I'm getting a coat on Friday afternoon, and I'm in Saturday morning. And as soon as those parts are dry, like, I'm finding every bit of spare time I have to go in and get that next coat on. And these are customers spraying flat, that it doesn't give you that advantage. You're at the mercy of your dry time. And so vertical finishing, like I said, it is the most impactful change that we made to our business. And, from hearing from our customers, it's taken some shops that spraying flat, they may finish 20 to 30 cabinet doors a day. And that's just working as hard as they can, trying to get all their primers or sealers on and to their final top coat. They're saying they do 20, 30, maybe 40 doors a day. And shops now report being able to do 200 to 300 doors a day without overtime, without having to bring in extra help. So yeah, it's very nice to be able to have some equipment that is affordable for the smallest shops. And it's funny, we thought, okay, we can hit a market here in the small to medium shops, and we certainly have. We're getting great feedback, hearing great stories on productivity gains, but we're also starting to see an interest in larger companies that see the potential. Maybe they have a flat line, but they have rework or they have custom colors and they want to increase throughput in that area. So we're able to even work with these larger companies to help develop a solution to be able to help them get the throughput they're looking for.
Well, that what you've done, and it's great, and I know your system, it keeps expanding all the time with new ideas and new products, and we'll talk about that maybe a little later. But the basic stuff that you got going are racks and holding systems to hold parts vertically and then move those parts out of the spray booth and into other areas of the plant, and that's great. I started my professional spraying experience spraying vertically to finish custom bicycle frames with DuPont Imron catalyzed polyurethane. And I can tell you spraying tubes vertically is a challenge. But it's quite a bit different than spraying flat panels, but I got quite comfortable with it. But it sounds like still the biggest objection that I hear to your system, and I'm sure that you hear, is the whole concept of changing from going horizontal to going vertical. What do they need to know to make that change?
Yeah. So that is, if when talking to a customer for the first time, that is the one thing I know. If they said, well, we have one concern, and I know what it's going to be right off the bat. It's, well, I spray flat. I'm nervous about going vertical because of runs and it's just different. And we're creatures of habit.
Horizontal gravity is your friend until the bugs come in, of course.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how many times I would be at the end of the day and I would spray outdoors thinking they were done. I go in the next morning and there's a wasp or a fly or a mosquito that has got in the wet finish and crawled around in it enough to cause it to have to be completely redone. So yes, you're correct about that. But with that said, I do know that is a concern. I myself, like I said, I sprayed flat for many years, and this is the one thing that because I had a little nervousness as well. It wasn't that I'd never sprayed vertically, like I alluded to early on in our talk here. I would move my cabinet boxes into the spray booth, fully assembled, face frames, finished ends on them. And the way that I pretty much talked myself into it and kind of comforted myself and, I can spray vertically was those boxes. If it's a framed cabinet, you may lay it on its back and get to spray the frames flat. But if you have a finished end or both ends are finished, you're spraying a vertical surface. You're not going to change the orientation of that cabinet to be able to spray flat the whole time. You just can't. It's either pick the frame to spray flat or your cabinet end. So that's how I talked myself through that. Like, okay, I've sprayed vertically. I've refinished cabinets. We would mask off a kitchen, turn it into a spray booth, basically, set fans up to exhaust out. We're spraying face frames. We're spraying end panels on fridge cabinets or finished ends. So I'm like, I've sprayed vertically, but the one door at a time process, the grab a door, lay it down, spray an edge and one surface, that I hadn't done. Or I had done, but what I'm getting at is my mindset. I had to change my mindset on the doors for whatever reason. I was nervous about spraying the doors, but I was able to talk myself off that ledge. And but with that said, there is a bit of a learning curve with going vertical. But if you ask many finishers, there's very few that haven't sprayed a surface vertical. I think our industry is geared towards spraying cabinet doors flat. Perfect example, you can go find hundreds and hundreds of flat racking solutions that you're going to spray one door at a time on and put on a flat rack. There's very little in the form of vertical finishing and racking. There's a couple companies that have equipment like that, but there's not many. And stepping into vertical finishing beyond the few solutions that are offered, like you may be looking at powered hang lines, which are incredibly expensive. And so we just felt, we were able to really hit a niche here and pretty much help anyone that wants to be able to change vertically, I should say. And one thing I would like to note, being a cabinet maker myself, having the experience in finishing, that seems to be a comfort with our customers. I would say out of the hundreds of customers we have, 95% of them are spraying flat prior to switching. And when I'm able to talk to them and help walk them through those tips and techniques and like, hey, I get it. I was in your shoes. They've all been able to make the change, and a few of them have called back like looking for tips and techniques, adjustments to make to be able to get the finish they're looking for. But I'll say what we have is when people start using our equipment, we see like it's a good indicator. A few of them have called, like I said, and they want those tips and tricks, and they'll reply back later or call us back, hey, that helped. The way that we realize that the other group of that 95% that I mentioned are getting it, they're calling back and they're realizing how much more they're able to produce, and they're ordering 2-3 times. We've got some customers I was looking through the other day placed 12 follow-up orders with us, and they see like they can grow in this. They see how fast they can finish. Our equipment, pivot point and pivot line, it's all compatible. So whether someone enters in with pivot point with the touch-free batch, lower volume finishing, or pivot line, which reduces material handling to the maximum extent, whichever one they enter in, we learn and we're like, okay, they've obviously got it. They're placing many follow-up orders, and we talk to many of them and hear of 3 to 5, 7 times productivity gains. So
that was something I wanted to ask as far as, it would seem to me that the obvious advantage of going vertical is just being able to finish like in a door, all sides at once. How much time does that save? Do you have numbers on that?
Well, as far as I'll speak to our equipment. So pivot point, like I said, it's the touch-free batch finishing, lower volumes. You've got all the hangers that attach in areas that any evidence of a screw hole or anything, it covers once the parts are assembled. All hangers are compatible between pivot point and pivot line. But so pivot point customers get the advantage of spraying both sides at once. Each part they're going to grab off the rack and put it into their hanging point to spray it. So those customers, obviously, if they're going from flat to vertical, they're going to automatically be spraying 2 times faster, getting double the amount. Our pivot line customers, they're the ones that's reporting just incredible productivity gains. And because of the way that our product works, we have the mobile rail, which most people refer to as the cart. They're able to push many parts at once. We've got customers that if they've got enough rail, they can push hundreds of parts at once to the finish guy to spray. They can create continuous flow. So those, like I said, we've heard reports anywhere from 3, 5, 7 times production gains. And one shop in particular in Texas, they bought a very large system, and within a month, they're reporting that they had removed all overtime, um, no weekend shift, and I believe they said they had added an extra $10,000 a month to their revenue. But before, I mean, this was a really big shop that had multiple booths that was spraying flat, but they put our equipment in and they had enough manpower to move hundreds and hundreds of parts a day through their process. So,
well, that's impressive. So you were talking earlier about tips. Is there any different kind of spray equipment or techniques that you suggest these people use?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I talk direct with almost all of our customers, and we've got customers using airless, air-assisted airless, just the old-fashioned cup gun you hook up to an airline, gravity-fed HVLPs. They're spraying pre-cats, conversion varnish, water-based, polys.
So just about anything.
Pretty much anything. The water-based customers, they're nervous at first. They're like, well, this is really thin product we're spraying. We're not sure if we can get the results we're looking for. So I tell everyone, I'm like, look, if you start from flat, like you're not used to vertical spraying at all, like you're making a clean change from flat to vertical, don't hang up 1 or 2 doors, do some testing on it, and come to this conclusion like, oh, well, I can't do it. I didn't get the finish I'm looking for. I'll tell many of them, hang up samples, take sample pieces of plywood in your shop, hang those up. And what the tips, and like I said, I don't claim to be the finishing expert. I do have 23 years of finishing expertise, or not expertise, but finishing experience. So with that said, I try to give as many tips as I can and what I've learned, which, to your question, changing out the finish tip, like if you're using a airless, go to a fine finish tip. Adjusting, the viscosity of the product. There's additives that you can put in to help it flow better. There's some
you're wanting a thicker product rather than a thinner product.
Right. And really, once you get used to it, like we thin our product out in our shop and we can get a glass-like finish. Like once you learn it, it just becomes second nature. But there's additives that you can put in. There's certain companies that are working on products that allow like the maximum hang time, so to speak. So you can spray this product vertically. It will bond. It's not going to run on you. But the viscosity of the product, that can be something to look at. Changing spray technique. There's many different profiles of cabinet doors. So changing up your technique, a shaker door, you may have to pass your gun across that different than you would a raised panel door with a miter with a beaded outside edge. Changing the spray technique.
What about overspray? Is there any difference in material usage, vertical versus horizontal, or is that just goes down to gun technique?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both. We've had customers report 20 to 30% less product being used, and the average person might think, oh, well, they're obviously not spraying enough if they're using that much less. But it becomes more of a thing. You become more mindful of how you're spraying that door. Yeah, it may take you a handful of doors or panels to get used to it, but once you figure it out, you're mindful of the product you're putting on to not get runs, which we've seen that as well in our shop, is using less actual paint and primers, because we hear a lot of people, oh, well, I like spraying flat because I can just dump it on there. And that can have its own problems in itself that may not show up immediately, but down the road you could end up with cracking and other problems if it goes on too heavy. So yeah.
So what's the typical learning curve and the reaction folks have once they get the hang of it? Did I say that? Get the hang of it?
Yeah. So are you asking as far as how long they can expect?
What's the time it takes to feel comfortable going from horizontal to vertical? Is it pretty fast?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, don't hang one or two panels up and immediately think like, oh, I'm going to get this. And it's funny, I just got an email. I've been working with a customer that's interested in a pivot line from New Zealand, and he's just opened his finishing shop up, and he just emailed this morning asking about these very things about vertical finishing and how to not get texturing or eggshell. So I'm going to be speaking with him later on and kind of going over the tips and tricks that I've found that I've helped other shops to walk through to help with the learning curve. But to your question, I mean, everybody's different, but 10, 15 panels of adjusting, adjust your spray technique, your spray tips, spray pressure to your gun. That can help in that area as well. So 10 to 15 panels. I mean, most people could probably, if they wanted to dedicate a few hours to it, could learn it. But many of them, like I said, I'll ask them like, well, have you sprayed vertically before? But well, no. I'm like, well, have you refinished the kitchen? Or like I mentioned, our cabinet boxes at our shop. Have you ever sprayed a cabinet box that the frame's attached to with finished ends? Well, yes. And I help them realize like you've probably sprayed vertical surfaces. You just, like I said, our industry seems to be geared toward flat finishing is the only method, and that's why there's so many racking solutions for finishing your cabinet doors flat.
Yeah. So what's next for Guffey Systems? You that inventor's mind of yours, I know, is working all the time.
Well, yeah, it is. It's great. I mean, we're constantly thinking of new ideas. We've got 10 or 12 new products we're going to be launching here pretty soon. We actually had some of those on display at AWFS, but we'll be having those available on our website here very soon. But as far as what's next, I'm constantly thinking of how to improve, what to add. Our customers are amazing. They'll send pictures like, hey, have you thought about this? Or one thing to note, like Guffey Systems, my business partner is our development company, Aptus Design Works. So we've had some shops like, hey, I need a longer T-bar, or have you considered this, or I need this. And with our product development team and engineers on board, I should say, we're able to develop some really good solutions for customers that may have a special use case. So we're constantly trying to add to our product line and get the industry to understand like how impactful of a change going from flat to vertical finishing can make. And I've seen it firsthand, and we hear from many of our customers just that it has completely opened up their shop. One story in particular, I know I'm on a little rabbit trail here, but there was a shop that they had told us they had their equipment for a couple months. They bought a pivot line and said it used to be all the time that the assemblers were just constantly needing doors. Like, we need doors. And the finishing part of the shop, it just couldn't keep up. They were spraying flat and took a long time to get those doors out. And once they put our equipment in, they were overloading everybody with these parts because they just streamlined it and just eliminated that bottleneck and opened up their entire stream of production.
Wow, that's great. All right. Well, if folks want to learn more about Guffey Systems, let's see, your website is guffeysystems.com, correct?
That's right.
All right. So appreciate your time today, Nathan. This is great. We're here in a non-visual medium right now, but so I think you have to see the Guffey Systems to understand what a difference it could make. But I'm pretty impressed with what Nathan and his team have done. So it's certainly worth checking out. But thanks again, Nathan, and I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future about finishing and some of your new inventions. Thanks a lot. That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Hexagon. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.